The desert at night was never truly silent. It only pretended to be. Wind rolled over the broken terrain like something alive, slipping through shattered concrete, whispering through metal skeletons of buildings that no longer had names. Somewhere far off, a coyote barked once, then disappeared into the dark as if it had never existed at all. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of that silence and didn't trust it for a second. She adjusted her night vision goggles, the green glow washing over her sharp focus. Dust clung to everything here, her boots, her gloves, even the broken remains of the abandoned border facility ahead. It looked dead. But Sarah had learned one truth in her years of service. Nothing in war is ever truly dead, it just waits. Alpha Team check-in. Her voice came through the radio, low, controlled. One by one, responses crackled back. Miller ready. Diaz in position. Bravo unit holding perimeter. Sarah exhaled slowly. Everything matched the intelligence brief. Hidden weapons cache, underground access, minimal resistance expected. Fast entry, secure data, extract. Clean mission. Too clean. She shifted her gaze to the structure ahead. Half-collapsed walls formed a twisted silhouette against the night sky. Rusted steel beams stuck out like broken bones. The entrance point, according to intel, was buried under debris near the center. Movement, Sergeant Miller asked quietly behind her. Sarah didn't answer immediately. Her instincts were louder than the radio. Too quiet, she finally said. Miller gave a small shrug. That's the idea, right, ghost site? Sarah didn't like that word. Ghost sites always had a way of making soldiers become ghosts themselves. She raised her hand. The team froze instantly. Stay sharp, she ordered. We go in slow. They advanced. Boots pressed into gravel. Every step sounded louder than it should have. The air smelled like rust and burned stone, like something had already happened here, something no one reported. As they reached the collapsed center point, Diaz crouched near the debris. Entry hatches here, he confirmed. He brushed dust away. A metal outline appeared beneath the rubble. Sarah felt it immediately, the shift in the atmosphere. Not fear exactly, but pressure, like the world itself was holding its breath. Open it, she said. Miller hesitated for half a second. Then he pulled. Metal groaned. The hatch broke free, and cold air rushed out from the ground below. Too cold. Too clean. Like it had been waiting. Sarah lowered her rifle slightly, scanning the dark opening. This isn't natural ventilation, she muttered. Miller looked at her. You think it's a trap? I think, Sarah said slowly, we just stepped into someone else's idea of a welcome. A distant crackle came through the comms. Command confirms, proceed. You are on the clock. 10 minutes. That's all they wanted. Sarah didn't like being rushed. But she moved anyway. Descending, she ordered. One by one, they dropped into the underground tunnel. The temperature changed instantly. The world above disappeared. Only darkness remained. Their flashlight beams cut through narrow corridors lined with reinforced concrete. Old wiring hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Emergency strips flickered weakly along the floor, pulsing faint green like a heartbeat that didn't want to die. Clear path so far, Diaz whispered. Sarah didn't respond. She was watching the walls. Too smooth. Too intentional. This wasn't a storage bunker. It was built to contain something. They moved deeper. The silence grew heavier with every step. Even their breathing started to feel loud. Then, a sound. Metallic. Soft. Like something clicking into place. Sarah stopped instantly. Hold, she whispered. Everyone froze. The sound didn't repeat. But her instincts screamed anyway. Report, Miller said quietly. Sarah raised her fist again. No movement, she said, but before she could finish, boom! The explosion came from behind them. The world shattered into fire and pressure. The blast threw Sarah forward into the tunnel wall. Her helmet cracked against concrete. Her vision flashed white. Dust swallowed everything. Ambush, someone screamed. Gunfire erupted instantly from both sides of the darkness ahead. It wasn't just one explosion. It was a sequence. Planned. Controlled. They weren't being attacked. They were being sealed in. Sarah rolled behind a reinforced pillar, coughing through dust and smoke. Her ears rang violently, but she still heard the most important sound. More boots. Moving toward them. From ahead. And behind. They're inside the tunnel system, Diaz shouted. Another explosion shook the structure. A section of ceiling collapsed, cutting off their retreat completely. Sarah fired a controlled burst into the darkness ahead. A figure dropped, but two more replaced it instantly. This wasn't a defense. It was execution. Miller, fall back, she ordered. But Miller didn't answer. A burst of gunfire cut through the smoke. Then silence where he stood. Sarah didn't look. There was no time. Diaz, move, she yelled. They sprinted deeper into the tunnel, but the path ahead narrowed, like the structure itself was guiding them somewhere. And then the speakers activated. A calm voice echoed through the underground system. Not shouting. Not panicked. Controlled. You are not authorized to leave. Sarah slowed for half a second. That voice wasn't local militia. It was trained. Professional. This facility is now sealed, the voice continued. Compliance will be rewarded with minimal suffering. Diaz looked at her, eyes wide. What the hell is this? Sarah's grip tightened on her rifle. It's not a weapons cache, she said quietly. Another pause. Then the truth hit her like a second explosion. It's a trap facility. The lights flickered. And in the darkness ahead, a red laser dot appeared on Sarah's chest. Then another. And another. Multiple targets. Closing in. The enemy wasn't rushing. They were surrounding. And as the first shadow stepped into view at the end of the tunnel, Sarah Mitchell understood something terrifying. This mission hadn't failed. It had started exactly as planned. And she was never meant to walk out alive. But as her finger tightened on the trigger, one thought cut through the chaos. They chose the wrong soldier to trap underground. The red laser dots on Sarah Mitchell's chest didn't shake. They held steady. Like the men holding them had done this too many times to feel excitement anymore. Too many times to feel anything at all. The tunnel was now a perfect killing corridor, narrow, reinforced, and sealed from both ends. The explosion behind them had done more than collapse an exit. It had finalized the trap. There was no retreat, no reinforcement, no clean extraction. Just forward. Or death. Sarah stood still for exactly one breath. Then she moved. A single step sideways broke the enemy's aim alignment. That was all it took. Gunfire erupted instantly. Bullets tore into the concrete where her head had been a second earlier. Sparks exploded across the tunnel walls, lighting the darkness in violent flashes. Sarah dropped low and returned fire in one controlled burst. One target fell. Two more shifted instantly to cover. Professional. Coordinated. Not militia. Not rebels. This was trained tactical force. Diaz, Sarah shouted. No answer. Only static and distant gunfire, echoing through the tunnel system like thunder trapped underground. Sarah didn't wait. She rolled behind a collapsed steel panel just as another burst of bullets shredded the space she had been standing in. Dust exploded into the air, choking visibility. Her breathing sharpened. Inhale. Exhale. Focus. This was no longer a mission. It was survival. From the darkness ahead, footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, synchronized. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. A voice echoed again through hidden speakers. You are advised to surrender. Sarah's eyes narrowed. The same calm tone. Same control. Whoever was running this wasn't just in the facility. They were the facility. She switched her radio. Command, this is Mitchell. We are compromised. This is a hostile containment operation. Repeat, we are inside a controlled kill zone. Static answered. No rescue. No backup. Just silence. Behind her cover, she checked her ammo. Low. Too low. One grenade left. One chance. The footsteps grew closer. Sarah pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes for half a second. Not fear. Calculation. Then she opened them again. I'm done waiting, she whispered. She pulled the grenade and threw it not forward, but to the side corridor. The enemy reacted instantly. 3 soldiers shifted toward the sound. That was the mistake. Sarah moved opposite. Vast, explosive light filled the tunnel as the grenade detonated in the side passage. The blast didn't kill, but it disrupted formation. Dust and smoke swallowed the corridor. Sarah sprinted through the chaos. A soldier turned too late. She struck first. A clean close-range shot dropped him instantly. Another raised his weapon. Too slow. Sarah kicked his rifle aside and fired again. 2 down. But more were coming. Always more. She kept moving deeper into the tunnel system, using branching maintenance routes she had noticed during entry. Narrow shafts, service passages, old ventilation grids. This wasn't random movement anymore. It was adaptation. The enemy expected her to run forward. So she went sideways. Behind her, voices shouted in rapid coordination. Target repositioned. She's using maintenance routes. Cut off Sector C. Sarah slid into a vent shaft just as bullets tore through the corridor behind her. Metal screamed as rounds punched through the walls. Inside the vent, space tightened. Barely enough to crawl. Hot air, dust, silence. Above her, the enemy moved like a machine, predictable in structure but relentless in execution. Sarah paused. Listened. 3 voices above. 2 below. They were boxing her in. Systematically. Like they knew her exact movement style. That thought hit harder than the gunfire. This is profiling, she muttered. They weren't just reacting. They were anticipating. Which meant they studied us, she whispered. Not just the team. Sir. She crawled forward, reaching a junction point in the vent system. Below her, she saw something that didn't belong in a weapons cache facility. A map. Glowing screens mounted inside a central control room. Live tracking. Heat signatures. Movement prediction grids. Her location blinked on it. Right now. Sarah's jaw tightened. This isn't a trap site, she whispered. It's a monitoring station. A soldier passed beneath her vent opening. She froze. He stopped. Looked around. Slowly. Like he felt something above him. Sarah didn't breathe. The soldier raised his hand. Contact above. She dropped. One silent strike. He hit the ground before finishing the sentence. Sarah grabbed his radio. Held it close. and listened. A voice came through instantly. Calm, controlled. She has entered internal systems. Initiate Phase 2 containment. Phase 2. That meant they expected this. She was not improvising anymore. She was moving inside a script already written. Sarah stood slowly, eyes hardening. Fine, she whispered. If you wrote the script. She looked down the tunnel system stretching ahead, dark, branching, endless. I'll rewrite the ending. From deep inside the facility, alarms suddenly shifted tone. Not panic. Not warning. A new sound. Structured. Coordinated. And then the lights changed from green to red. The entire underground system had entered a new mode. Hunt protocol. And Sarah Mitchell, alone in the enemy's underground maze, realized the truth. They weren't trying to stop her anymore. They were trying to finish the experiment. But she wasn't just a target. She was a soldier who had already decided she would not die quietly in their system. She tightened her grip on the rifle and moved deeper into the dark. The deeper Sarah Mitchell went, the less the tunnel felt like a facility and more like a living organism. It breathed. It reacted. It watched. Red emergency lights pulsed through the underground corridors in slow, rhythmic waves, not random, not chaotic, controlled, like a heartbeat syncing to her movement. Every step she took was now being tracked. Every pause was being analyzed. Sarah slowed near a junction and pressed herself against the wall, listening. Footsteps echoed somewhere far behind her. Still pursuing. Still coordinated. But something had changed. They weren't rushing anymore. They were guiding her. Containment corridor engaged. The same calm voice echoed through hidden speakers. Subject is approaching primary control zone. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Primary control zone. That wasn't a storage bunker. That wasn't a weapons cache. That was command infrastructure. She looked down the corridor ahead. The structure changed again, older concrete replaced with reinforced steel, power cables thick as arms ran along the ceiling. Biometric locks sealed off side doors. This wasn't built for storage. It was built for decision-making. She moved carefully now, every sense heightened. Her rifle stayed ready, but her mind was shifting from survival to understanding. Because something didn't add up. A failed mission doesn't come with this level of infrastructure. A simple weapons cache doesn't require heat tracking systems, live biometric mapping, or controlled kill corridors. This was something else entirely. Sarah reached a sealed door. No handle. Just a scanner. The screen flickered as she approached. Then, her image appeared on it. Live. She froze for half a second. They're feeding my data into the system, she muttered. The door unlocked. Not because she forced it. Because it allowed her in. That realization hit harder than any explosion. Sarah pushed the door open. Inside was a command room. Large, dark, and disturbingly clean. Multiple holographic screens floated above circular control consoles. Maps of the underground facility rotated slowly in real time. Heat signatures moved across them like pieces on a chessboard. And in the center, a glowing red marker labeled Subject MITCHLL active. Sarah stepped inside cautiously. Her boots echoed. The room didn't respond. No alarms. No immediate ambush. Only silence. Welcome, the voice said again. But this time, it wasn't from speakers. It came from a central console. A terminal flickered to life. And a face appeared on the screen. Not a soldier. Not a field commander. A scientist, middle-aged, calm, almost disappointed. Sarah raised her rifle instantly. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded. The man didn't react to the weapon. Instead, he studied her like she was data. "You're further than expected," he said. Sarah's grip tightened. "You set us up." A slight nod. "Yes." No hesitation. No denial. Just confirmation. That single word made the entire mission collapse in Sarah's mind. The explosion. The tunnel ambush. The sealed exits. The controlled pursuit. It was never a weapons cache mission. It was a test. Her voice dropped dangerously low. "How many of my team are alive?" The scientist paused. "Statistically irrelevant." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Answer the question." Another pause. Then, "Your unit was assigned to validate combat response under isolation conditions. Survival rate was not a primary metric." Silence fell. Heavy, sharp, deadly. Sarah took a slow step forward. "You used us as test subjects." The man tilted his head slightly. "Not used, evaluated." That word snapped something inside her. She slammed her hand against the console. "What are you testing?" For the first time, the scientist looked slightly more focused. Adaptation under extreme containment pressure. The screens behind him shifted. Footage appeared. Sarah's squad. From earlier. Every movement. Every decision. Every shot. Recorded. Analyzed. Replayed in predictive models. Sarah felt a cold realization crawl up her spine. "They weren't just tracking us," she whispered. "They were learning us." The scientist nodded. "Yes, and you are exceptional." That didn't feel like praise. It felt like ownership. Sarah stepped back slowly. Her mind was no longer in survival mode. It was in reconstruction mode. "This facility," she said carefully, "isn't on any military map." "No," he replied, "it is not meant to be." Her eyes scanned the room again. "All of this underground system, tracking, command nodes, you're not military." A faint smile appeared on the screen. "No." That was worse. Sarah lowered her rifle slightly, not in surrender, but in calculation. "Then what is this?" The scientist leaned closer. And for the first time, his tone changed. Not colder. Not warmer. Just honest. A behavioral battlefield model. He gestured. The screens zoomed out. Miles of underground tunnels appeared. Dozens of simulated subjects. Dozens of past operations. Sarah wasn't the first. She was just the latest iteration. "This facility," he continued, "was designed to simulate real war outcomes when command structure collapses." Sarah's voice was sharp. "And you killed my team for simulation data." A pause. Then, "Yes." The word landed like a physical air. Sarah stood still. For the first time since the mission began, she stopped reacting and started thinking differently. "You made a mistake," she said quietly. The scientist blinked slightly. "Oh." Sarah stepped closer to the screen. "You assumed I was still inside your simulation." The room lights flickered. A warning tone sounded. For the first time, the system reacted to her. Sarah reached behind her gear and pulled the data drive she had taken from the vent soldier earlier. She held it up. "Your system tracks movement," she said, "predicts behavior, builds outcomes." She inserted the drive into the console. "Problem is," the screens began glitching. "You forgot one thing." Alarms started to activate across the facility. The scientist's expression changed slightly. What did you do? Sarah looked directly at the camera. I stopped following your pattern. The holographic map distorted. Her marker disappeared from the system. For the first time, the simulation couldn't locate her. And in that moment, the entire underground facility shifted. Not toward containment, not toward observation, but toward emergency response. The scientist stared at her, realization forming. You're not escaping, he said slowly. Sarah raised her rifle again. No, she replied. I'm coming back up. And as sirens finally erupted across the command room, she fired a single shot into the console. The screens exploded into static. The scientist's image flickered and vanished. The underground system screamed into full lockdown mode. But Sarah Mitchell was already moving. Because now she knew the truth. She wasn't trapped in a failed mission. She was inside an experiment that had just lost control of its subject. And experiments that lose control don't survive what comes next. The moment Sarah Mitchell fired into the console, the entire underground facility changed its behavior. It didn't just react. It panicked. Red lights shifted into violent strobing patterns. Sirens layered over each other until the sound became almost unbearable. Bulkhead doors began sealing across corridors like falling jaws. The system was no longer observing her. It was trying to erase her. Sarah didn't wait. She moved. Boots hit the command room floor as alarms screamed overhead. Behind her, holographic screens shattered into static. The scientist's system avatar flickered, distorted, then vanished completely. But Sarah didn't care about him anymore. She cared about one thing now: getting out alive, and making sure this place never operated again. Containment breach escalated, the automated voice echoed through the facility. Initiating full lockdown, neutralization authorized. Neutralization. That meant one thing: kill everything inside. The corridor outside the command room sealed shut with a heavy metallic slam. Sarah reached it seconds later and slammed her shoulder into the door. It didn't move. Another lockdown layer engaged. Of course, she muttered. They had designed this place to survive everything, except betrayal from inside its own system. She stepped back, scanning fast. Their maintenance hatch, half hidden behind a panel. She ran to it and yanked it open just as the corridor behind her began to fill with armed response units. Heavy footsteps. Multiple directions. No hesitation. The system's final solution. Sarah dropped into the maintenance shaft just as gunfire erupted above her. Bullets tore through metal plating, sparks raining down into the narrow space. She fell hard, rolled, and kept moving. No pause. No fear. Only motion. The vents were tighter now, hotter, vibrating with emergency power reroutes. The entire underground structure felt like it was collapsing inward on itself. But Sarah knew something important. Systems like this always had one weakness. Control requires a control point. And she had just seen it. She crawled through the shaft until it opened into a vertical service tunnel. Below her, layers of infrastructure. Above her, the exit routes. She looked up. Faint light. The surface. Freedom. But between her and that freedom, more soldiers. They were already climbing up through adjacent shafts, trying to cut her off. Target still active, voices echoed. Upper vents compromised. She's heading to surface access. Sarah adjusted her grip on the rifle. No time for stealth anymore. She dropped. Landing hard on a metal platform, she immediately fired upward. 2 soldiers fell before they could fully react. The third fired back wild, desperate. Sarah moved forward, closing distance instantly. One strike, one shot, controlled, efficient. Then silence. Her breathing was heavier now, but her focus was sharper than ever. She climbed, step by step, level by level. The facility was collapsing into itself, doors sealing, systems shutting down, fire suppression flooding unused corridors. The experiment was dying, and it was trying to take her with it. But Sarah wasn't part of its equation anymore. She reached a final access gate. Biometric locked. Red warning flashing. Surface access restricted. She stared at it for half a second, then pulled the explosive charge from her vest. Still thinking in systems, she whispered. She placed it on the lock. Backed away. Boom! The door blew open in a burst of metal and light. Cold air rushed in instantly. Real air. Not recycled. Not controlled. Freedom. Sarah stepped through into a narrow surface tunnel leading upward toward daylight. The sound of chaos behind her faded slightly, but didn't stop. The facility was still trying to stabilize, still trying to recover. But it was too late. Halfway up the tunnel, Sarah paused. She pulled a small tactical drive from her gear, the one she had extracted earlier from the system node. All data, all simulations, all tracking protocols. Everything they used to build this underground war machine. She looked at it for a moment, then slid it into her rifle's mounted transmitter. If you wanted data, she said quietly, you should have made sure the subject stayed inside the cage. She fired the transmission. Every military satellite pinged. Every secure channel flagged. Every command network outside received it. The truth of the facility. Live. Unfiltered. Then she kept moving. Above her, light grew stronger. The exit was near. But behind her, the facility made its final move. A deep rumble shook the ground. Structural collapse initiated. They were destroying it. Not to stop her, but to erase evidence. Sarah broke into a sprint. The tunnel began collapsing in real time, walls cracking, metal twisting, dust flooding behind her like a storm. She didn't stop, didn't look back. One final climb. Then, light. Sarah burst out of the surface tunnel and rolled onto dry desert ground just as the underground facility behind her detonated in a controlled internal collapse. The earth shook violently. A massive plume of dust and fire erupted from the ground, swallowing everything beneath it. For a long moment, she just lay there, breathing, alive. The wind returned. Real wind. Not filtered, not controlled. Just the desert. She slowly sat up, looked back at the crater forming in the distance. No base. No system. No command room. Just ruins. Her radio crackled faintly. A distant voice. Unknown asset, confirm status. Sarah picked it up, paused, then replied calmly. Mission failed. A pause. Then she added, but I'm still here. She stood slowly, dust falling from her uniform, weapon still in hand, eyes steady. The war had tried to turn her into data. A variable, a test subject. But it made one critical mistake. It assumed she would stay inside the system. Sarah turned away from the burning crater and walked into the desert alone. Not as a trapped soldier, not as an experiment, but as something the system could never calculate correctly. A survivor who had already learned how to break the game. And somewhere deep inside collapsing underground ruins, the last remaining servers flickered once, then went dark.